नमस्कार मंडळी, 5:30 वाजलेले आहेत. विवेकानंद केंद्रातर्फे मी तुमच्या सगळ्यांचं मनपूर्वक स्वागत करते. सगळ्यांना एक नम्र विनंती आहे, सगळ्यांनी आसनस्थ व्हावं आणि त्याबरोबरच प्रत्येकाने आपले मोबाईल फोन स्विच ऑफ करा किंवा सायलेंटवर ठेवा, म्हणजे कार्यक्रमामध्ये व्यत्यय येणार नाही. धन्यवाद. Good evening, friends. I request once again to all of you to come on the seat, and then only we'll start our program. Again, the request for keep your mobile phones on silent mode or switched off, please. Our today's chief guest has arrived already in the auditorium. So, as per Vivekananda Kendra's mobile phone silent. Good evening to eminent dignitaries, guests, delegates, and patrons with great pleasure and immense exultation. I am Smita Puranik, a member of Nidhi Group of Vivekananda Kendra. Feel privileged to extend here my warm welcome to all present for this special program of Vivekananda Kendra, Northeast Calling. Friends, today's topic is Atmanirbhar Bharat and Northeast. It is my privilege to invite today's chief guest, Sri Sanjeevji Sanyal, full-time member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, Government of India. The dignity to honor with us his presence, guest of honor, Shri Suhas Mehta, Director and Business Head, SMS Infrastructure Private Limited, and I'm glad to invite Sushri Nivedita Bhide, All India Vice President of Vivekananda Kendra, Kanyakumari. I request Shri Abhayji Bapat, Maharashtra Prantha Pramukh, to escort our dignitaries on the dais. Thank you, Abhayji. Let us give all our dignitaries on the dais and also invite his industrialists, patrons, all well-wishers of Vivekananda Kendra from Thane, Navi Mumbai and around area, and our All India Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari General Secretary, Sri Bhanudas ji, and our All India Treasurer, Sri Praveen ji. I also welcome all our Karyakartas also. Today is a great freedom fighter, Swatantraveer Vinayak Damodar Savarkar's 56th Punyatithi. We are paying tribute to him with great respect. Friends, Northeast Calling has been a journey for all of us, having listened to various speakers who have been there, done that. And today, yet another segment of this journey unfold. Atmanirbhar Bharat and Northeast. Let us begin the program by invoking Almighty through a prayer. I'll request Shraddha to recite the prayer. Shraddha.
Sit erect. Gently close your eyes. Namaskar Mudra. भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः सुष्ठुवागंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सं समित्युवसे वृषङ्नग्ने विश्वा नर्या इळस्पदे समिध्यसे स नो वसुन्याभर सङ्घच्छध्वं संवदध्वं संवो मनांसि जानतां देवा भागै यथा पूर्वे संजानना उपासते समानो मन्त्रः समितिः समानी समानं मनसः चित्तमेषां समानं मन्त्रम् अभिमन्त्रयेवः समानेन वो हविषा जुहोमि समानीव आकूतिः समानार्धयानि वः समानमस्तु वो मनो यथा वसु सहासति ईशावास्यमिदगं सर्वै यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जिताः मा गृधः कस्य स्विद्धनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Thank you, Shraddha. Namaskar. Vivekananda Kendra is a voluntary organization carrying out in action the thoughts of Swami Vivekananda of Jagat Guru Bharat. It's a spiritually oriented service mission. I'm happy to say that we are completing 50 years for our Vivekananda Kendra, Kanyakumari. It was founded on 7 January 1972 in Kanyakumari by Eknathji Ranade Vivekananda Kendra Rock Memorial was dedicated to nation and its founder, Mananiya Eknathji Ranade, established second phase of the memorial in the name of Vivekananda Kendra. To take Swamiji's message of Sir Man, Sir God, and man making nation building to the society through education, rural development, publications, yoga, natural resource development, programs, and culture. Today, Vivekananda Kendra, that is VK, is an extraordinary organization with ordinary human beings comprising of a cadre of dedicated Jivanvratis, Sevavratis, Vanaprasthis, and thousands of local Karyakartas, as well as lakhs of patrons and well-wishers. Based on four Karya Paddhatis, Samskar Varga, Yoga Varga, Swadhyay Varga, and Kendra Varga. With these friends, Vivekananda Kendra, that is VK, has presence in 24 states, 4 union territories, through its 1,105 branches all over India, from Arunachal Pradesh to Andaman and Kashmir to Kanyakumari. Vivekananda Kendra also received Gandhi Peace Puraskar for contribution in rural development, education, and development of natural resources in 2015 by Government of India. Friends, actually, the Northeast region is considered the crown of Bharat. Its geographical location and strategic geopolitical presence has often made it a target of border nations. It is unfortunate that even 70 years after independence, people from Northeast continue to be clubbed together and singled out. Often forced to migrate from their idyllic but underdeveloped states for even basic education and job opportunities. This unjust alienation towards this region led to serious identity crisis amongst the natives. And mind you, these are all our fellow men, countrymen. This unjust alienation towards this region led to serious identity crisis also. So, enchanting Northeast has been the thrust area of Vivekananda Kendra since its very inception. The reasons are both geographical and cultural. Northeast has 5,112 kilometers long international border. It shares 6 neighboring countries, namely China, Tibet, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal. Since 22 kilometers land corridor connects Northeast, it is with rest of India, popularly known as Chicken Neck. The people are very simple in Northeast. They are nature-loving, rooted in indigenous faith, and therefore have become target of anti-national forces, aligned cultures, forcible conversions, extortions, cross-boundary issues, and terrorism has spoiled the peace of this region. It has tremendous economic resources in the form of oil, coal, flora, fauna, water, etc. Now it needs support of the country for its development in all the sectors. Even then, we had artists like S.D. Burman, R.D. Burman, Bhupen Hazarika, Parveen Sultana, sports person like Bhaichung Bhutia, Deepa Karmarkar, Mary Kom, Mirabai Chanu, who has become very much famous. Well, It is just goes to show that the ability and intent is there. Yet, there was and still an unrest need to give moral, organizational strength to this region. And Shri Eknathji Ranade, founder of Kendra, was therefore very particular that appropriate multidimensional activities should be undertaken here. With this view, Kendra is working in the region with the same theme, development through culture. Kendra is at present having numerous active branch centers in Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, and Nagaland. And it's slowly increasing its activities to the other northeastern states like Manipur. In 1970, Sri Eknathji Ranade, with his great vision, formed a team of Jivanvrati Karyakartas and directed them for the development of Northeast region. Today, from 7 schools, we have 67 schools throughout the region in Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Meghalaya. Up till now, more than 25,000 students took education from our schools. And 1 B.Ed college in Arunachal Pradesh, 1 nursing school in Assam, 175 Anandalaya school for tea plantation workers, and education support to 100 Balwadis, 4 craft centers, research center for cultural development and documentation. Up till now, this is the work as done by Vivekananda Kendra in Arunachal Pradesh and Northeast area. Actually, friends, all this seems too easy, but it's tough to achieve. Many committed working hands giving up on their careers and personal life has shaped the fortune of these people. Though all this has been achieved, lots needs to be done, and the challenges ahead are changing and increasing day by day. As per Ajit Dovalji, we as Indians need to sensitize ourselves about an important part of our country and a part of which we were never made aware of, a part which has been salvaged by organizations like Vivekananda Kendra. Friends, our objectives are crystal clear, and the machinery to achieve them is in place. The only roadblock is funding, which is of immense importance. If we have to carry out sustainable development through a team of dedicated workers, any sort of interruption in the process due to financial constraints can break the rhythm of this initiative. Therefore, it's an appeal to all of you to contribute generously towards this cause by many ways, that is, forming a new industry, skill development programs, tourism, and many more things to develop this Arunachal and Northeast region. The appeal is to all who have resources as well as sources to get the resources, which will be an investment for our nation with rich returns in the form of national integrity. I'm sure we all will go hand in hand henceforth. After this is little bit about Arunachal Pradesh and Vivekananda Kendra work in Northeast region. But now we'll see one more short film which we will watch. Now, for last 15 years, the impact of Vivekananda Kendra with a short film of Anandalaya, which is the tea plantation workers children's school at Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. One moment. Yeah. Those who are not getting place to sit here, there is a arrangement in Lotus Hall with screen also. So please take the advantage of Lotus Hall and see our program up to the end. Thank you. So friends, now we'll go to watch our film on Anandalaya. I request Sumit, please.
दूर दूर तक फैले असम के इन चाय बागानों से हम सभी परिचित हैं। इन्हीं चाय बागानों में आजकल कुछ और खिल और पल रहा है, जिससे हम बिल्कुल अनजान हैं, जिसकी आवाज हमने शायद ही सुनी है। ये है आनंदालय। विवेकानंद केंद्र का चाय बागानों में चल रहा एक अनूठा उपक्रम। ये उपक्रम उन बच्चों के लिए चलाया जाता है जिनके माँ बाप चाय बागानों में मजदूरी करते हैं। असम की आबादी का 1/4 हिस्सा बन चुकी इन मजदूरों की तादाद टी ट्राइब कहलाती है। चाय बागानों से जुड़ी कॉलोनियों में ये बसते हैं। चाय कंपनियां इन्हें घर, महीने भर का राशन, इसके साथ कुछ बुनियादी सुविधाएं भी देती है। अंग्रेजों के जमाने से चली आ रही ये व्यवस्था अब कई पीढ़ियों के लिए परंपरा बन चुकी है, जिसके चलते ये चाय बागान ही इनकी दुनिया हो जाती है।
बागान में हम लोग जब बेसिकली देखते हैं एक आत्मविश्वास की कमी, क्योंकि वर्षों तक के ब्रिटिशों ने जो लोगों को लेकर के आए तो काम करने की दृष्टि से, लेबर की दृष्टि से ही लेकर के आए।
परमिट माइकी 5 नंबर, टेम्परली माइकी 7 नंबर, केस चालान छोटा 6 नंबर।
इसी सूचना के साथ इनके दिन की शुरुआत होती है। लगभग हर माँ बाप का दिन चाय बागानों में काम करते करते गुजर जाता है। इनके बच्चे पाठशाला तो जाते हैं, लेकिन पाठशाला से घर आने के बाद वे अपने ही हाल पे रहते हैं।
गांव की परिस्थिति ऐसी होती है कि बच्चे तो स्कूल जाते हैं, घर से तो निकल के जाते हैं, क्यों कोई बच्चे ऐसे होते हैं क्योंकि बीच में स्कूल नहीं पहुंचने से पहले कहीं पे जाएंगे, कुछ खेलेंगे, कुछ करेंगे, उसके बाद घर फिर भी वापस आ जाते हैं, क्योंकि घर में उनको देखभाल करने के लिए कोई ऐसा होते नहीं। और कुछ बच्चे ऐसे होते हैं क्योंकि स्कूल में जो जाते हैं, स्कूल में कुछ सिखाया जाता है, टीचर होमवर्क करने के लिए देते हैं, तो वो घर आने के बाद उनको घर में कोई सिखाने वाले होते नहीं है, तो वो उसको सिखाए कैसे। तो दूसरे दिन जो स्कूल जाते हैं तो टीचर पूछते हैं तो उनको तो आज नहीं किया, दूसरे दिन भी ऐसे किया, 3-4 दिन ऐसे होने के बाद तो पिटाई तो करते हैं टीचर, तो पिटाई करने के बाद वो अपने आप स्कूल छोड़ देते हैं।
शिक्षा से छूटता और टूटता नाता इन बच्चों के सामने एकमात्र विकल्प रखता है, और वो विकल्प होता है चाय बागानों में मजदूरी का।
ये पूरे एजुकेशन सिस्टम को ही एक सपोर्टिव काम होना होगा, कैसे इनके अंदर पढ़ाई के प्रति एक लगाव हो, इस दृष्टि से ये आनंदालय प्रकल्प की शुरुआत हुई।
आनंदालय इन बच्चों में शिक्षा के प्रति रुचि निर्माण करने का प्रयास करता है। इसी हेतु आनंदालय का स्वरूप सुनिश्चित किया गया है। पहली कक्षा से 5वीं कक्षा तक के बच्चों को आनंदालय में शामिल किया जाता है। रोज 2 घंटे चलने वाले आनंदालय में पढ़ाई और सामूहिक संस्कारों पर जोर दिया जाता है। साथ में खेल, सूर्य नमस्कार, कहानियाँ और गीत, इनके माध्यम से बच्चों का सर्वांगीण विकास साधने का प्रयत्न होता है। केंद्र ने आनंदालय का जिम्मा यहीं के युवाओं को सौंपा है। घर घर में जाकर बच्चों को दाखिल कराना, आनंदालय चलाना और साल भर में कुछ कार्यक्रम आयोजित करना, ये सारा काम युवा आचार्य करते हैं।
तो जो बच्चे हमारे आनंदालय में पढ़ने के लिए आते थे, अब वो पढ़ाने के लिए तैयार हो गए हैं। मुश्किल से हमको 9-10 पास बच्चे मिलते थे। अभी तो हमारे जो आचार्य रहे, जो पढ़ा रहे थे, वे अभी ग्रेजुएट हो गए हैं। कई सारी बहनें नर्सिंग पास कर चुकी है, कई सारे भाई अलग अलग बिजनेस फील्ड में गए हैं। तो जो पढ़ा रहे हैं उनके ऊपर एक अच्छा इम्पैक्ट हमको दिखाई देता है।
असम के डिब्रूगढ़, तिनसुकिया, जोरहाट, शोनितपुर और शिवसागर, इन 5 जिलों में करीब 130 आनंदालय केंद्र चलाता है। इसके साथ अरुणाचल प्रदेश में 32 आनंदालय चलाए जाते हैं और ओडिशा में भी आनंदालय का प्रारंभ हो चुका है। इन आनंदालय में कुल 5000 छात्र सहभागी होते हैं और लगभग 130 युवा आचार्य इनके लिए अपनी सेवा प्रदान करते हैं। लोगों की या अभिभावकों की प्रतिक्रियाएं इन आनंदालय की उपयोगिता और प्रभाव सिद्ध करती हैं।
जो सुबह उठ के योगा सोगा करता है, वो गीत संगीत गाता है, देशभक्ति गीत, वो अच्छा लगता है हम लोग का। माँ बाप को यही सपना है जो बच्चा आगे बढ़े।
परिवर्तन आया है हम लोग को पढ़ाई में, जो ये करता है वो सब ठीक है। अभी हम लोग को जो ट्यूशन देने वाला ट्यूशन देता है और नहीं देने से भी मतलब चलेगा। उठो
আগতে কথা চথা নুশুনিছিলে, এতিয়া ভালকৈ কথা চথা শুনে। আনন্দ যা বুলি ক'লে আগতে নগৈছিলে, এতিয়া ধুনীয়াকৈ গৈছে। য'ত ত'ত নেযায়, কথা ক'লে শুনে আৰু মাত চাত। এতিয়া আগতে পইচা তইচা বিচাৰি থাকে, যিচ কিচবোৰ কৈ থাকে, সেইটো লাগে এইটো লাগে। এতিয়া আনন্দলৈ গৈ কিনি এতিয়া য'ত ত'তো নেযায়, ভালকৈ যিমান টাইমত যাব লাগে সিমান টাইমত আনন্দলৈ যায়।
विवेकानंद केंद्र असम और अरुणाचल प्रदेश में पहले से ही शिक्षा क्षेत्र में अपना योगदान दे रहा है। विभिन्न स्थानों पर चल रही बालवाड़ियां और विवेकानंद केंद्र विद्यालय इसके ठोस उदाहरण हैं। केंद्र मानता है कि शिक्षा किसी भी व्यक्ति में आत्मविश्वास पैदा करती है। आनंदालय उसी दिशा में की गई एक नई पहल है, जो शिक्षा और संस्कार के द्वारा चाय बागानों के बच्चों में आत्मविश्वास और आकांक्षाएं पैदा कर रही है। चाय बागानों में बसे युवा और महिला वर्ग के लिए भजन संध्या का आयोजन होता है। इन भजन संध्याओं में स्वच्छता और स्वास्थ्य चिकित्सा जैसे कार्यक्रमों पर विचार और अमल किया जाता है। शिक्षा के साथ साथ सामाजिक परिवर्तन लाने में भी आनंदालय कारगर साबित हो रहे हैं। चाय बागान असम की पहचान तो थे ही, अब आनंदालय चाय बागानों की पहचान बन गए हैं और उम्मीद से भरे संगठित समाज की नींव रख रहे हैं।
These Anandalayas have changed their life and made them Atmanirbhar also through Vivekananda Kendra Karyakartas. Before we move on to the topic, that is Atmanirbhar Bharat and Northeast, on this August gathering, I request our All India Vice President of Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari, Mananiya Nivedita Didi, to felicitate our today's chief guest, Shri Sanjeevji Sanyal, a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. I request Didi to felicitate our guest of honor, Shri Suhas Mehta, Director and Business Head, SMC Infrastructure Private Limited. Thank you, Nivedita Didi. Before we start for the next program, I request again those who are standing outside the auditorium, please take advantage of the lotus area and see the program through the screen. Friends, today we are meeting in Thane, but before that, we used to meet in Wellinger Institute of Management at Dadar, Matunga. Today is our sixth meeting for the need to generate awareness about the development of Northeast. The first meet was held on 23rd January 2016, and Sri Ajit Ji Doval, National Security Advisor, Government of India, was the chief guest, and the topic was National Security and Well-being of People in the Context of Northeast. On 21st January 2017, Defense Minister of India, Srimati Nirmala Sitharamanji, graced the occasion, and the topic was Importance of Economic Development in Northeast Region. And third meeting on 24th March 2018, Minister for Commerce and Industry, Shri Suresh Ji Prabhu, addressed our meeting. Topic was Potential for Industrial Development in Northeast. On 2019, Sri Kiran Rijiju, present Minister of Law and Justice of India, Member of Parliament, Arunachal Pradesh, and the topic was Challenges in Northeast. Because Kiran Rijiju is from Arunachal Pradesh, and I'm happy to say that he is from Vivekananda Kendra School also. And today, we are here for the sixth meeting. Before that, due to pandemic, on 12th September 2020, we hosted an international webinar with galaxy of speakers, Sri Ajit Dovalji and Sri S. Gurumurthy, Chairman, Vivekananda International Foundation, and Sushri Nivedita Bhideji. And today, we are our sixth meeting again for Northeast Calling. I'm profusely delighted for this opportunity
fair that I first explain the concept clearly of what I mean by Atmanirbhar Bharat. Very often this is translated in a way that gives the impression that we are somehow going back to pre-1991 import substitution or a return to license permit Raj and so on. So first of all, let me assure everybody that we have no intention of taking India back to the ambassador car. The idea is not to reimpose an inefficient system that was clearly bad for our economy and more broadly for our mindset that had existed from the 1950s till 1991 liberalization. It's quite obvious to everybody that liberalization of 1991 was a good thing. So what is it that we mean when we say the word Atmanirbhar? The main thing to understand out of this is it is not about cutting out India's links to the world. When we are saying that we are self-reliant, it doesn't mean that we are somehow becoming isolationist. Far from it. What we want to do is to participate in the rest of the world, but to do it in our own terms, by leveraging our own internal strength. Now, it is one thing to say it, but it's always best to illustrate the point so that you understand why this is different from old-style, socialist-era idea of import substitution. So all of you know that India has a world-beating pharmaceutical sector. Some of it is right next door in Pune. Now, this is a world-beating pharmaceutical sector, particularly in generics, but otherwise as well. We also have a world-beating automobile sector. We export automobiles to the rest of the world. Now, the problem is not that we are linked to the rest of the world. Many of these things are incidentally done by foreign companies, so it's far from it that we are discouraging links to the world. However, any of you who have been through the last 2 years will know that during this period, global supply chains went through a major shocks and breakdowns. And we discovered that while we may have this very competitive pharmaceutical sector, it was totally dependent on critical inputs which came from single-source foreign countries, particularly China, but from other places as well. Similarly, the automobile sector is now heavily dependent on chips. Now, we don't manufacture these chips in India. We are completely dependent on these for coming from other countries. Now, even if those countries are friendly countries, let me say that if the supply chains break down, then they break down. And we have seen that in the last 2 years. So if we want to, as a government, a responsible government, want to provide a certain amount of protection and support so that some of these critical ingredients for pharmaceuticals are manufactured in India, or we provide some support so that at least some capacity of building or making chips is based in India, then this is not isolationism. This is simply being practical. This is simply investing in our own resilience as an economy. So this is very important because I do want to point out that leveraging our internal strength is not somehow tantamount to isolationism or that we want to cut ourselves from the rest of the world. Far from it, we go and invite other countries to come and invest in India, which, if anything, is strengthening the links with the rest of the world. But anyone who is watching what is happening right now in Ukraine will be left in no doubt that you need to have a certain amount of capacity onshore. And no matter what other countries say about how much they will help you in times of trouble, the fact is, in the end, if you cannot help yourself, the help, even if other people promise you, is not going to arrive. So this is the basic idea behind Atmanirbharta. We have to invest in ourselves, and we will. But this is not to do it in a way to go back to license permit Raj, to sort of hide inefficiency behind this idea of. The idea is to try for the best, and I will come back to this point a little bit later. Now to come to the point about the Northeast. Clearly, the Northeast is a very important part of our national narrative. That's why we are here, and I've got a packed audience to listen to the Northeast, so obviously we do have an emotional connect. But sadly, we have, over the last many decades since independence, not invested enough in it. In fact, so much so that a well-known journalist, many of you will know who I'm talking about, made a comment when he was asked why he was not reporting on a major event in the Northeast. He talked about the tyranny of distance. I'm sorry, this is mostly about the tyranny of ignorance. Because this same gentleman had no problem reporting events in New York. Surely that is further away. But this is not just about a few individuals. The systematic exclusion of the Northeast from our national narrative is a very important issue. So since this is about building our internal strength, the first thing you need to have is building on a national narrative. What is our emotional connect to this part of the world? And to understand this, you have to understand also that the Northeast has always been an important part of our national consciousness and of our national narrative. It may not be there in your textbooks that we have suffered through in school, so it requires that I give you a small history lesson. See, from the very beginning, go back to our ancient texts and itihasas and epics. The Northeast is mentioned there, particularly, of course, Kamrup. But you also have mention of Chitrangada and Manipur, and so on. So the Northeast is very much there, a part of our national narrative from the very beginning. Parashuram, when he travels across India, one of the places he visited was Arunachal Pradesh. That place is still marked to this day. And there are two theories about where Rukmini, Krishna's wife, came from. One of them is that she came from, and that is the more popularly known in this part of the world, that she came from central India, possibly from what is now Madhya Pradesh or Vidarbha area. But there is another claim, which I subscribe to, that she came from a tribe in the Northeast. Now, you can take a guess where she came from, but I'm just pointing out to you that for a very long time, these linkages have been around. This is not a modern construct of a modern nation state called the Republic of India. And this is true over the centuries since the Iron Age when these epics were written. Now, have you ever wondered that we keep getting invaded over the centuries from the northwest? Why is it that we didn't get invaded from the northeast? Well, the reason for this is that there were many attempts actually to invade India from the northeast, particularly by the Burmese. And the reason they were unsuccessful is because of the heroic resistance of the people of Assam and Manipur in particular against these invasions, such that they were not successful. And many of these invasions carried on as recently as the 19th century, when the Myanmarese invaded 3 times and carried out extreme brutalities in the northeast of India. Again, very unlikely that many of you know about this. Now, even when the invaders from the northwest made their way across the rest of India and finally made it to the northeast, the people of the northeast gave them a bloody nose. This is also a history that is not taught to you. So let me tell you a little bit about it. I'm sure you've heard of Bakhtiyar Khilji. He was the guy marauder who came and destroyed Nalanda. Many of you will know about this. The question is, what happened to Bakhtiyar Khilji after he sacked Nalanda and took over parts of Bengal? And that is linked to the history, incidentally, of the Northeast. So let me tell you this story. So after he had sacked Nalanda and taken over northwestern Bengal, Bakhtiyar Khilji and his Turkic army decided that they wanted to go northward and sack. They had heard that there were some very large Buddhist monasteries in Tibet, which were rich, and they wanted to sack them. So they went north and they requested the king of Assam, Raja Prithu, for help. Now, how many of you have heard of Raja Prithu? Okay, literally there are 3 people here who have heard of him. So this is important, why you should know this story. So Bakhtiyar Khilji asked Raja Prithu for help to invade Tibet. So Raja Prithu knew that this was a trap. So he promised help, but he basically delayed and delayed and delayed. So ultimately Bakhtiyar Khilji got fed up. He took his army. They went through Sikkim, Bhutan, and made their way into Tibet, where they sacked a whole bunch of monasteries. But eventually, because the weather was changing and they were continuously facing guerrilla attacks, they made their way back into India, where they turned up at a bridge across one of the tributaries of the Brahmaputra. It's not very clear exactly which river that he wanted to cross, but anyway, he turned up at the stone bridge, where he discovered that his road was blocked by Raja Prithu and his army, who had obviously tricked him to let him go north while they prepared for his return. And on that, near that stone bridge, there was a major battle in which Raja Prithu basically destroyed Bakhtiyar Khilji's army. Bakhtiyar Khilji himself just about managed to escape by hiding in a Shiva temple of all things. And then he made his way back to Bengal. But his generals were so annoyed with him for having got caught in this trap and the losses that he had faced in this campaign, that they killed him. So that is how Bakhtiyar Khilji life and career came to an end. And it had to do with the Raja Prithu of Kamrup. But that was not the end of the story. There were 17 more raids by the Turco-Mongol rulers into the Assam Valley, and all of them were repulsed one by one. And the very last of them has a close link to the history of this part of the world. So you all know about how Savai Jai Singh led Aurangzeb's army, and he came here and he defeated Shivaji, and he forced him to enter into a treaty. I think it's called the Treaty of Purandare, if I'm not mistaken. 1666 is the date, if I'm also not mistaken. And then, of course, Chhatrapati Shivaji was forced to go to Agra to submit himself to Aurangzeb. While he was there, of course, Jai Singh died, but his son, Ram Singh, effectively allowed Shivaji, helped Shivaji to escape, and he came back and he retook some of his, took control of some of his, the forts that he had surrendered. Now the question is, why did Aurangzeb not immediately attack and capture Shivaji? Because after all, he was very annoyed when Shivaji escaped, and in fact he took away many of Ram Singh's estates to punish him. The reason is that just at that moment, the Mughals faced a major problem on the eastern flank in Assam, where their forces had been pushed out of the Assam Valley. They had gone into the Assam Valley, but the Ahom kings of Assam had pushed them out and recaptured what is the area around Guwahati. So there was a sudden new threat there, and so the Mughal army had to be diverted in a different direction. So Ram Singh, who was in the bad books of Aurangzeb, was brought back. The army that had come here to defeat Shivaji was diverted, was reassembled, and it was diverted to Assam. So it marched east, and in 1671, they assembled and faced a much, much smaller army led by an Ahom general called Lasit Borphukon, very, very close to today's Guwahati. Now, it was very clear that one of the armies was much bigger than the other, and the Ahoms had no chance if they was faced an open battle. So they hid themselves in the low hills. If you've been to Guwahati, you'll see there are low hills all around. So they basically created defenses around those hills, but there was very clear that this was a matter of time before they would get into trouble. In fact, they did make one foray out, which was completely smashed. So they withdrew back to their defenses. But Ram Singh found that these guerrilla tactics meant that he had to finally break through in some fashion. So after trying to go through the hills in various ways, he decided he shall transfer his army onto these boats that he had built and go up the Brahmaputra, bypassing the hills. Now, this is exactly what Lasit Borphukan was waiting for. He had assembled a small navy at a turn in the river and hidden them there. And when the Mughals were coming up the river, he went in using fireboats to disrupt the lines, and their own boats were much, much smaller. And by the way, Lasit Borphukan himself was quite ill at this point, but he still went and led the army. And in that battle, the Mughal river navy flotilla was completely destroyed and sunk to the bottom of the Brahmaputra. This had a big implication, because not only was this huge army that had been assembled, been completely destroyed, it also created the space for many other rebellions. And this is incidentally the reason that between 1671 and 1674, Chhatrapati Shivaji was able to recapture a large part of the territory. And of course, then, if I am not mistaken, in 1674, he managed to crown himself as Maharaja, as king. So the point of this story is that you may not realize this, but we are all interconnected. And this is a national story of interconnectedness, of resistance to foreign domination, that remains true all the way through to European colonization as well. Again, the first part of the country that was colonized properly was Bengal. Northeast is right next door. And yes, the Northeast was so ferociously able to fight back that it is also the last part of the country that was colonized. It is only after 3 invasions by the Myanmaris into northeast of India against both the Manipuri and the Assamese that the people of the kingdoms of that area were so weakened that the British were finally able to colonize in the 1830s. Finally, they were able to colonize the Northeast. So this is the last part of the country that the British colonized, even though it was right next to the first part that they colonized. And even then, they faced very ferocious resistance, for example, from the Jaintiyas of Meghalaya. Again, not many people would even imagine that the Jaintiyas were a part of our national resistance to colonization. But this is true. One of the reasons so much effort was put into converting the people of Meghalaya to Christianity was the ferocious resistance of the Jaintiya kings and the people to the British. And in fact, they would repeatedly make raids into the plains, capture British officials, and decapitate them to Kali. In fact, the temple to which they did it is the Jaintiya Durga. That temple is still there, not far from Shillong, if you visit it. And the tribe itself takes its name from the Jaintiya Durga. And there is still a significant number of the Jaintiyas who still practice Shakta Hinduism. But even after this, and brutal suppression of resistance, they continued to simmer resistance. And the very last kingdom that was completely brought under British rule happens to be the state and the kingdom that was resisted the longest, interestingly, are the kings and the royal family of Manipur. The last sort of war of independence of any part of India was in 1891, as late as that, in Manipur, when the Manipuri nobility rose in revolt. They dragged the British officials of that area to Kangla Fort. And if you've ever been to Imphal and been to Kangla Fort, you'll know that near the entrance of the palace there are these two gigantic white mythical beasts. So in between them, they dragged them and they decapitated all the officials, as a result of which there was the Anglo-Manipur Wars. Of course, it's a very small place, and you can imagine that the Manipuri had no chance at all. So they were defeated. The key leaders of the revolt were executed, and the royal family itself was then carted off to Kalapani, to Andamans. Now, this is before the building of the cellular jail and the revolutionaries were sent there. So this is in the 1890s. And the place in which they were kept is a hill, which was called Harriet Hill. So just 3 months ago, when the Honorable Home Minister, Amit Shahji, went to Andamans, he visited Harriet Hill and renamed it Mount Manipur. The reason this is important to know, because all this history, as I said, is not there in your textbooks or in the national narrative at all. Many of you may be hearing it for the very first time because I'm telling you this. And yet there are an important part, not just of the Northeast history, but of all of India's history. And it is only now that we are beginning to dig this up and beginning to become a part of the national narrative. Why is this important for this to be a part of the national narrative? Because unless there is an emotional connect, a civilizational connect, you will not be willing to shed your blood to defend that part of the country. What will happen is that, as happened in the 1962 war, if you do face foreign aggression, all that you will do is that, like a prime minister of that time, you will state, "Oh, my heart bleeds for Assam." Let it be said that now that this narrative is being rewritten, and thanks to organizations like Vivekananda Kendra, these ancient linkages are being re-established. Let me say that never again will a Prime Minister of India make such a statement. As long as blood flows through our veins, our heart will not go out. It will keep beating for the Northeast. Now, of course, it is one thing to build emotional links, but in the end, you also have to build physical links with that part of the world. And of course, there is a problem with the geography in the chicken neck that attaches us. Thanks to another twist of history called partition, we have ended up with a geography where the linkages to that part of the world and internally inside that part of the country have not been invested in adequately. So much so that parts of that part of the world which you can physically see visually would take 8, 9, 10 hours to go to, because you had to drive to another place, take a long bridge across, then drive all the way back. And so the linkages between the two banks of the Brahmaputra, for example, were very badly connected till very recently. And a huge amount of infrastructure, as a result of which, has been created just in the last 6, 7 years to be able to build up these linkages for economic, strategic reasons. To give you some sense of what I'm talking about, did you know that 3 out of the 5 longest bridges in this country are in the Northeast? 3 out of 5. Okay, I'll name them. I've written them down. There's the Bogeybill Bridge, the Dibang Bridge, and the Bhupen Hazarika Bridge. So they are 3 out of 5 bridges, longest bridges in this country. It will also be interesting for you to know that all these 3 bridges were completed just in the last 5 years. Just 2 months ago, in January 2022, the first cargo train to reach Manipur finally made it to that state. Of course, one can say it is shameful that it took 75 years after independence for this to happen. Also true that if you go to Agartala, for example, you will see a beautiful new terminal that has been built at the Maharaj Bir Bikram Airport. If you go there, you will see, of course, it's not as large as Mumbai Airport, but I can tell you the quality and finish and facilities of that airport are world class. They're at least as good as the ones that you will have here. And don't take my word for it. You can Google it up. You can see the photographs. You'll see no expense has been spared in order to make it world class. Now, why am I making this point? I'm making this point because you see very often in India, and this is not only about the Northeast, we have this impression that somehow we should build something jo jugaad mein chal jayega. So, okay. In fact, we celebrate jugaad. What are we basically doing? We are celebrating shoddiness. Books are written about, we are making do with some shoddy things, so we should actually celebrate it, bottom of the pyramid. I'm sorry. The rich are rich basically because they have access to good world-class infrastructure. If you give the poor and the underdeveloped parts of the country access to world-class infrastructure, they will also become rich. It is not that the rich and the developed are somehow more intelligent. It is just that they have access to this infrastructure. You just create this infrastructure for others, they will also become developed. Incidentally, this line of argument is very often made whenever you try to introduce something advanced and technologically advanced in this country. So I remember when mobile phones were first being introduced and being, widely built out in India in the late 90s, many Gyanis of that time would say, "Arey, why are we doing this? This is for the rich. We should first have fixed line, then we will do phone. What do the poor want to talk to each other about?" I'm not joking. I remember, many of you are old enough to remember this conversation. Why do they need world-class anything? The reason is that there is this patronizing, condescending view that somehow people who are in remoter parts of the country, in poorer parts of the country, have no real interest in being part of the world or in development. Or that if you did give them something world-class, they wouldn't know what to do with it. But as we have discovered, if you give even the poorest person a phone, it does not take them too long to discover TikTok. And when TikTok gets banned, they're quite happy to move on to whatever it is that is the replacement, Chingari or whatever happens to be the app. So, point is that the northeast of this country had been waiting for good quality infrastructure to be built. That infrastructure is literally being built out as we speak. This year's budget, which many of you may have heard on television, which Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala ji presented, very categorically mentioned that we are going to, the plan for reviving demand in this country is very heavily dependent on building heavily on infrastructure. And so that is a very important part of what we want to do. And we will invest in that. The Northeast, quite apart from having strategic importance, is also a part of the country that has got a lot of importance in terms of natural resources. It is one of the few parts of the country that actually has oil and natural gas. You also happen to be a part right next door in Mumbai High. So there is another link going back. And we need to invest into being able to extract these and deploy these resources in a way that is both sustainable, but also helps the local economy. There has to be a payback into the local economy. But there are many other ways in which we can do it. This is not an economics class, so I'm not going to dwell on the idea. But the point I'm making to you is, there are many, many links between various parts of the country. These links have to be physically built, they have to be emotionally built, and we have to keep investing in it continuously. So let me end by saying that the first part of India that became free of colonial rule, albeit briefly, was also the Northeast. So it was the last part that submitted to British rule. It was also the first part that was liberated, because this is the one part of the country that the Azad Hind Fauj, albeit briefly, liberated. And so for a short while in 1944, the first Prime Minister of independent India, Netaji Subhash Bose, was effectively in control of that little part of India. And the place where the Azad Hind Fauj had its headquarters is a place called Moirang, which just a few months ago I visited. It's sad that that headquarter building, which was actually a small hut, and it still has, that hut is still there. On its steel roof, there are still markings of British aircraft shooting. Their bullets holes are still there. And yet we did not seem to have bothered to have preserved this extraordinary artifact of our history. The good news is, finally, in 2022, a project is coming together in which a big that hut is being preserved, and a big canopy is being built on it, so it can be retained, and a small memorial to the INA is being built at Moirang. There's also a small museum next to it, which is very, very interesting. It's in bad shape, but I hope it will be upgraded. But when you go there, you will realize the extent to which the locals, the Meitei people of Manipur helped Netaji when he was there. Of course, as you know, that particular effort failed. But the stories of the INA ultimately then inspired a big revolt. And it happened in 1946, right here next door in Mumbai, where the naval ratings of the Royal Indian Navy rose in revolt against the British, and 20,000 sailors, war veterans, took control of 80 ships in Mumbai harbor. And that was the event when suddenly the British realized that they no longer had the loyalty of the Indian Armed Forces. In fact, when they asked the Royal Indian Air Force to attack these mutinying sailors, they refused. And it was very clear that even the army was going to be very shortly in open revolt. That is the point in 1946 when the then British Prime Minister Attlee decided that India could not any longer be controlled, and that is when India became free. So there is, as I said, these interlinkages which I thought I shall emphasize. Now, of course, in addition to emotional links and physical infrastructure, we also need to create soft infrastructure. And that soft infrastructure requires not merely government effort. Of course, government effort is needed, but it requires civil society organizations to also invest through education and other social development measures. And this is why I am proud to say that I am here to speak at the event of an organization, Vivekananda Kendra, which has done exactly that. It's an extraordinary organization. Of course, it does work in many other parts of the country. But the work it has done in the Northeast, particularly in Arunachal and Assam, is just extraordinary. I mentioned earlier that I have personally had a chance to witness it. and I have to say it is simply outstanding. With that, let me stop and thank you again, all of you, for giving me this opportunity.
On behalf of Vivekananda Kendra, I thank Sanjeev ji. Sanjeev ji, aap to hamare hi hai. Sir, we feel honored to have with us today, and your speech was very much informative. And about history, we got to know so many things from you. So the work done by this government in Northeast also we know about from Sanjeev ji. And you are told about the Atmanirbharta, very well explained Atmanirbhar, how to become the Atmanirbhar. We have to invest ourselves. And as long as our blood runs through veins, our heart is always with Northeast. That's really a great thing. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again. Friends, today's guest of honor, Shri Suhas Narayan Mehta. Suhas Narayan Mehta was born and brought up in Mahad, a small town near Raigad. Got educated at IIT Bombay. From humble beginning of life up to junior college in his hometown, in spite of having lucrative offers from overseas, he decided to stay back in India and create employment. Since 1986, he got associated with SMC, which was a reasonably small company back then. Under his leadership, the company grew today up to 1,000 plus crore infrastructure company with a presence in multiple states and countries. The company today boasts of expertise in major areas of infrastructure from water supply, water treatment, sewerage treatment, roads, tunnels, bridges, waste to energy, and waste to reuse under various business models such as APC, EXIM, annuity, HAM, ESCO, etc. His various achievements include largest LED replacement project with investment, implementation of Asia's largest WTP, offshore pipeline, sewerage to RO treated water, largest mall in Oman, etc. He has employed over 5,000 employees yet. So he was strived to create a platform to everyone by being involved on member of CSR projects as guided by Arun Seth, from oxygen transportation, generation, to creating infrastructure and education for the underprivileged, orphan, blind, and aged people. He is a firm believer of giving back to the society. His mantra is, invest in people without expectation of returns. So today's guest of honor is again with Vivekananda Kendra only, I think. Now I request Suhas ji, a guest of honor, to address the gathering, please.
Honorable Shri Sanjeev Sanyal ji, our Chief Speaker, Honorable Nivedita Didi ji, and distinguished guests. And I would like to clarify that if you give me some more works to do, I can easily do it. But speaking in front of such a big gathering is not my expertise. I thank Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari for bestowing me with this honor. A warm good evening to all of you. It's very difficult for me to say anything after this enlightening speech what we have received from Sanjeev ji. It's like lighting a bulb on a sunny day. Anyway, I'll put my best efforts with my thoughts regarding Northeast calling. I understood recently the kind of activities that were initiated by Mananiya Eknathji Ranade and the foresight what he had. Shri Madhav Nanivadekar was my neighbor at Mahad when I was 6 to 7 years old. And I had opportunity to meet Eknathji at that time when he had come to Madhav's residence. And my father had supported this good cause with a small donation what he could afford at that time. So Northeast or the Seven Sisters are integral part of our country and we should never forget it. I remember, everybody must have seen Chak De India. So I remember a scene from that movie, and in very beginning 2 hockey players from Northeast are registering and Javed Khan says something like, "Welcome, aap to hamare mehman hai." And to this, one of them is visibly unhappy with these greetings and says, "आप अपने ही घर में मेहमान बन के कभी happy हो सकते हैं क्या?" It's exactly this feeling that Northeast India is not something separate, but it's our own, and this should be embedded in everybody's heart, every citizen of India. I feel we can develop this country of Northeast calling, I can develop this thought of Northeast calling in a multi-pronged way, in addition to commendable work that is done by Vivekananda Kendra in education, healthcare, etc. Basically in the areas of tourism, infra development, industrial development, sports, and film city or something like that. So in tourism, to connect people from all parts of India, tourism in the entire Northeast has to be developed. Today we see that Kaziranga and Shillong are the only places which are normally visited. It's essential to develop and market tourism in other states of Northeast. This will help interaction in local customs, traditions, food, and people, as well as generate sources of income for local people. Short documentaries can be made on Northeast and shown in advertisement before the movie or on OTT platform. Some popular movie star or some cricketer or some sportsman can be our ambassador for this purpose. Let Northeast be the tourism capital of Indians as well as for foreigners, and this should be the main aim and our thrust. In infrastructure area, government has planned huge development projects in Northeast. Special incentives are also given for outside companies to come to Northeast and work there. This has enabled influx of professionals and skilled labor, as well as has generated employment for local people. This is a giant leap towards interaction between Northeast and other parts of India. The accessibility to all parts of Northeast should be made easier with good road, railway, and air network. Though I work in infrastructure, I'm sad to say, I work pan-India, I'm sad to say that I have not entered into Northeast even today, only because of logistics issue. Then we can go for some industrial development. When I mean industrial development, it's in IT sector. If IT hubs are set up, giving additional incentives, enabling Indian and international companies in various parts of Northeast, to facilitate this, government should ensure safety of expats and Indian citizens. The government should plan on to making Pune, Bengaluru, or Hyderabad in the Northeast, and this will do wonders. Our next generation should talk about Imphal or Dimapur as we talk about Pune or Bengaluru. Then in sports, Northeast has always produced athletes of international repute in the fields of boxing, weightlifting, archery, football, gymnastics, etc. There should be a mechanism where sportsmen from other parts of India should be able to take training in Northeast, which will enable a greater interaction. And then I feel that film or television is one of the most popular mode to create a platform of amalgamation of cultures. If some sort of institute is set up in Northeast on the lines of film television division of Pune, it will be of great help. Thus, we can see that there are many ways in which we can interact with our brothers and sisters in Northeast. Here, towards the end of sharing my thoughts today, I would like to say that everyone here should plan their next holiday in Northeast, and I am certainly going to do it. I would like to thank the organizers for bestowing me with this honor. A special thanks to Sri Sanyalji for sparing his valuable time and enlightening us. Swamiji had said, there cannot be a cause without an effect. There cannot be a cause without an effect, and the present must have had its cause in the past and will have its effect in the future. Hence, our actions today will bear the fruits in future generations. A big thank you to all, and have a great weekend. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Suhashji, for your kind words and good suggestions. Sir, we are looking forward for Northeast development from entrepreneurs like you. Thank you very much. Friends, we are moving towards our program, and it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce our respected Nivedita Didi, All India Vice President of Vivekananda Kendra. A short introduction I am giving. Introduction is very long, but I have made it very short. Okay, yes. Nivedita Raghunath Bhide is a life worker, full-time volunteer of Vivekananda Kendra, Kanyakumari since 1977. That is the first batch of fifth batch from Vivekananda Kendra. At present, having the responsibility of All India Vice President of Vivekananda Kendra, Kanyakumari. Her special responsibilities include training of Jeevan Bratis, dedicated full-time workers of Vivekananda Kendra, training of the teachers of Vivekananda Kendra Vidyalayas, coordination of Vivekananda Kendra Institute of Culture at Guwahati, a regular faculty in All India Yoga Shiksha Shibers and All India spiritual retreats conducted at Vivekanandapuram, Kanyakumari. She has represented India in the seminar on Swami Vivekananda conducted by ICCR and Monash University in 2013 at Melbourne, Australia. In the international meeting of educational experts at Darwin, Australia, convened by UNESCO for the Asia-Pacific region in 1999. She is a member of Shankar Trust, Madhya Pradesh, member of Hindi Salahagar Samiti of Defense Ministry from 2015, governing body member of Rajya Ananda Samstha of the Government of Madhya Pradesh, founder member of International Forum of Indian Heritage. Still many are there. I have taken some selected only. Many educational institutions, including universities, IITs at Chennai, Delhi, Kharagpur, IISc Bangalore, IIM Indore. She has participated and presented papers in many international conferences. She has guided total 17 seminars conducted for 14 tribal communities in the northeastern India on the topics traditional systems, change, and continuity. She is the recipient of many awards, namely 4th highest civilian award, Padma Shri, from Government of India. In 2017 for social service. Honorary degree of DLit from SNDT Women University, Mumbai on 11 January 2019. Degree of Doctor of Philosophy in the field of service to mankind in the Faculty of Social Sciences for contribution in promoting universal brotherhood amongst the mankind from Desh Bhagat University on 14th February 2017. Vandaniya Saraswati Bai Apte Award from Bharatiya Stri Jeevan Vikas Parishad Thane for a substantial work in the society. This is a small introduction I am giving for Nivedita Tai. Now I request Mananiya Sushri Nivedita Didi for appeal on behalf of Vivekananda Kendra.
माननीय संजीव जी सन्याल, माननीय सुहास जी मेहता, and all distinguished guests present here. My namaskars to you all. Vivekananda Kendra started in 72, and as you heard, it is completing its 50 years. Even before the birth of Vivekananda Kendra, Mananiya Eknathji Ranade, when he had traveled northeast in 1950s, he found that here the people are very simple, deeply rooted in culture, and representing the essence of Indian culture, that is tremendous diversity and yet rooted in common vision of life. But if the modern so-called individualized, West-oriented education starts spreading and the anti-national forces start focusing, which already had started, on the Northeast, then these simple people will get carried away and the diversity will get interpreted as separateness, and the oneness will be lost, and this beautiful region will lose its peace. Therefore, Eknathji had decided since then that Northeast should be the focus of our activities. Thus, after when Vivekananda Kendra was started, from the very first batch itself, the life workers were posted there, as they were posted in other parts of the country, but the chunk of, that is almost the 50% will go to the Northeast. After posting there, it's very remarkable. Means Eknathji told the Karyakartas of first, second, third batches that first you have to live with the people. So for the first and second batch, it was told you work in government school as teachers. You understand the people, you accept them. Unless we consider we become one with the people, we cannot render real service to them. The service cannot be from the condescending attitude. That is, we know anything, we are civilized. And these people, we have come to civilize them. That cannot be service. We have to understand what are their needs. We have to understand what are their strengths. We have to understand what are their vulnerability and protect them. So that is how the Karyakarta started. And I can summarize the focus of Vivekananda Kendra's activity in Northeast in 3 words. One is Seva, second is Sanskriti, and third is Samanvaya. So, first Seva, that is the people in very interior parts, they need education, they need Medicare, they need support, they need to feel part of a bigger institution or organization or a force. And that is how Vivekananda Kendra started working in the interior parts of Northeast. It is a completely mountainous region, and it shares the largest boundary with China. If the people there are not clear about which nation they belong, they are not proud of it, then even if our whole Indian army goes there, they cannot control the insurgency if it starts there. Because they will not be able to make out whether the person is from China or from Arunachal Pradesh. But a village in Arunachal Pradesh can immediately identify if some outsider has come to the village. And that is why the people there should be nationalists. They should love India. They should understand, they should know, and even the rest of India should know that we are one. We are part of India. So that is why. But first to address to their concern, and that is how the schools were started. Now schools were in those days very interior places. Means I will just give you one example. that if a teacher after vacation, the teachers used to be from different parts of India, or different states. So if teacher after vacation has to go to the school, he will, his wife, children, the luggage, and sometimes they will first travel by train, maybe 2 days, 3 days, reach Guwahati, then by bus. Then after that, they have to sit in boat. Then boat will get, because the Brahmaputra has so many streams. In between there will be sand, so they have to get down. Then they have to sit in one jeep and then cross, go by the jeep. Jeep means only because it has 4 wheels and 1 steering wheel. That's why it is jeep. That is the condition. And then you have to again go in boat. Sometimes you have to sit on the elephant because the stream has such force that boat cannot go. And like that, ultimately, and if the boat gets stuck up in sand, then they have to stay there overnight till the next help comes. And that's how ultimately they will reach the school. There are our students who will walk for 7 days and reach the school. So naturally, initially, all schools were residential schools. So in those days, the teachers and all, they did tremendous work. And today, that is the fruit in Arunachal Pradesh. There is not a single Arunachali who does not know the word Vivekananda Kendra Vidyalaya. All over Arunachal, it is known. Even a Christian MLA, if he has to win, in election, he has to tell that if you give me votes, I will start Vivekananda Kendra Vidyalaya here. And I can tell you many stories about Seva, but I will stop with here. Then second is Sanskriti. We have rich culture there. Apparently, it looks that they are Janajati. But it's not like that. If we go deep into it, the vision is all Vedantic vision. You see the same divinity everywhere. And that is why they are one with the nature, they are one with other people, and we don't deride others' gods. So, but the missionaries who started working there, they started interpreting this as differently. I will just give you 2 examples. First, they started calling their gods and goddesses as spirits. You worship spirits, bad spirits, good spirits. So yours is a primitive religion. You don't have religion. Or second, all the Janajatis have, for training their younger generation, they have an institution. It is a multi-purpose educational institution. It has its own traditional names like Musup, Raseng, Pa, Darbar, like that. For different communities, different names. So all that was coined in a word, youth dormitory. And the youth dormitory was projected in such a way, youth dormitory means where youth mix very freely with each other. These people have no morals or something like that, was the projection. But actually, when we started studying for these different communities, and we found that, ultimately Atmanirbhar means what? It comes from faith in oneself. That yes, we have a purpose on this earth. We have something which is special, and we are unique. We represent some very deeper principles which even the world needs. That confidence was needed. And that is how through these seminars we started building up that confidence. So of that confidence, I will give you one example. For a community, Vanchu community, our seminar was going on. And in that seminar, one Sanwang, who is also our Karyakarta, means Arunachali Karyakarta, he presented paper on PA. PA means this multi-purpose educational institution. So when he started talking about PA, he was using the word PA. He never used the word youth dormitory. So our own some educated people there, he stood up and he said, you are saying PA, you say youth dormitory. He said, it is not youth dormitory, so I will use the word PA. Then that person said, then how others will know what is PA? He said, let them read my paper. So that is the confidence. Why we should interpret ourselves in others' terms? Let others understand us in our own terms. And that confidence slowly through these seminars. Seminar means it's not like what we conduct in cities, you know, we just identify some scholars, we give them papers, and the seminar is conducted. There it is 1 year affair, it goes on. Because those who can write, they don't know what is the tradition. Those who know, they cannot write. So what we do, those who write, we tell them, you will not quote a single book. So you will not quote books. You will go back to your bastis, you will discuss with the people, those who know, and you write the paper from your own perspective, not from the Western perspective, not from the individualized view of life, but the integral view of life. And that is how they started writing. And then another example, once in Idu Mishmi community, there was some problem, and the case went to the court. So the judge said, is there anything written about your tradition? Then they said, yes, when our seminar was conducted, there is a book which Vivekananda Kendra had brought out, Vivekananda Kendra Institute of Culture. So based on that book, the judgment was given. So that is documentation. So our own traditions from our own point of view are documented. And there are many such things. Because of this now in Nishi community, such tremendous confidence has come. They have started their own Gurukul to give the tradition. Tradition means they are given modern education also and their traditional knowledge also. That is one more thing. There are many things, but I will tell you the third thing, that is Samanvaya. See, we all know Panchatantra story, you know, the 4 bulls who were very strong, and then one fox comes and tells the lion, it's very simple, make these 4 fight, then each one you can separately gobble up. And that's what happened. So, the diversity in Northeast is so tremendous. After every 20 miles, you know, the dress changes, the language changes, the name of God, the name of festival, everything changes. And this diversity, now as it happens in the house also, husband, wife may quarrel, brothers may quarrel, son and father may quarrel. Some quarrels here and there are there. So what these so-called academic scholars had done, these fights between 2 communities, for example, they were documented. And then it was told that these 2 communities have always been hostile. That is how it was projected. So we thought that's not correct. We will start focusing on the commonalities. Though the name of God is different, name of festival is different, our attitude behind that is same. And we shall start focusing on that. So calling different community leaders together and interacting with them, slowly they started realizing it. And that is how today, the earlier Nishi, Gelong, Adi, Fir Apatani, Fir like that, there are many communities, they all were separate. Now they say we all belong to one group, and they have come together, and they have started working together. So this Samanvaya, that is bringing people together. Or in Assam, the Satras are strong points. Because of Satras only, the culture was preserved in Assam in spite of all this. Whatever our history, Sanjeevji told us, you know, the Satras were that rallying points where people were strengthened. But somehow, the Satradhikar, there are now many Satras. Satras means something like Samartha Ramdas Mutt, I will say, what he had done, 1100 mutts. But it is still more elaborate. That is, in that even on art, on literature, everything will be there. So these Satras, unfortunately, were not coming together. So Vivekananda Kendra focused on them. And that is how we had a very big program in Delhi, where the all main Satras came together on stage. And they said it's only Vivekananda Kendra which can bring us together and make us see the larger picture. So whatever Vivekananda Kendra Institute of Culture tries to formulate, that becomes later, you know, the talk of Assam. So whether it was Satra, whether it was land policies, whether it was development through culture, the real sustainable development is possible only if it is based on the cultural values. And therefore, cultural values are important, and cultural values are practiced only if we hold on to our traditional gods and goddesses. So that is how the development through culture concept, it was picked up very fast. And like this, and as an intellectual fountainhead, Vivekananda Kendra Institute of Culture works there. Now, just my appeal to you is, many times when we say service or support to service, we understand very easily giving support to a sick person or even to some schools. But such type of work, where our confidence gets enhanced, means that's what Atmanirbharta is there. Once I know the purpose of my life, the purpose of my culture, the purpose of my community, or I belong to such great land, then once that confidence is established and then opportunities are provided, really self-reliance in all fields starts. But many times, this work of building the self-confidence or samanvay, that is coordinating different communities together or documenting the practices from our own point of view of different Janajatis, that is not seen as seva. And actually that needs more support. Means this also of course needs, there is no doubt. That is also basic need. But we need all these three, and that is how our Maharashtra Pranta and especially Mumbai, Thane, we have been conducting these Northeast calling programs where we can make people aware about the Northeast, its needs, and also Northeast also feels confident that we are not fighting with these anti-national forces alone, but the whole nation is with us. It is that confidence the Northeast needs. Thank you. Namaste.
Friends, listening to Nivedita Diti is always a pleasure. And we can listen to her for a long time also, but due to time's constraint, she has given a very small information about an appeal to us. But we'll go towards the program, and we are at the end of the program now. So I request Shri Madhav Naniudekarji to propose vote of thanks.
नमस्कार। सभी वक्ताओं ने इंग्लिश में बात की है, और हम हमेशा विवेक केंद्र में जब जाते हैं तब हिंदी में बात करते हैं। मैं चाहता था कि मैं मराठी में बात करूं ठाणे में, लेकिन सन्याल जी शायद समझ नहीं पाएंगे, इसलिए मैंने सोचा कि मैं हिंदी में ही बात करूं। मैं आपके सामने आभार प्रदर्शन हेतु प्रस्तुत हुआ हूँ। ये कार्यक्रम की जिम्मेदारी निधि समिति ने मेरे गैर मौजूदगी में सौंपी गई। कम समय में ये जिम्मेदारी मुझे सौंपने के बाद मैंने ठान ली थी कि यह कार्यक्रम हम सब ठाणे कर यशस्वी करके ही दिखाएंगे, और मैं निधि समिति के सभी सदस्यों का मनपूर्वक धन्यवाद देता हूँ कि जिन्होंने मुझे इस लायक समझा। हमारे निमंत्रण पर श्री संजीव सन्याल जी अपने व्यस्त कार्यक्रम से अपना बहुमूल्य समय निकालकर यहाँ पधारे और हम सबको आत्मनिर्भर भारत एवं ईशान्य प्रदेश का महत्व और उपयोगिता पे अवगत कराया। मैं उनके प्रति आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ और कृतज्ञता भी देता हूँ। हमारे सम्मानीय अतिथि श्री सुहास मेहता जी ने बहुत ही कम समय में हमारे आमंत्रण का स्वीकार किया और ये कार्यक्रम की शोभा बढ़ाई। उन्होंने हमें आश्वस्त किया है कि कुछ प्रकल्प वो ईशान्य भारत में जरूर शुरू करेंगे। उनको विहार केंद्र से पूरा सहयोग मिलेगा। उनके भी मनपूर्वक आभार। जहाँ यह कार्यक्रम संपन्न हो रहा है, इस टिपटॉप प्लाजा के श्री मनोज भाई और उनके सुपुत्र श्री अमित, इन्होंने संपूर्ण योगदान इस कार्यक्रम के लिए दिया है। उनका और उनके कर्मचारी वर्ग के सहकार्य की सराहना बहुत ही जरूरी है। धन्यवाद उन्हें भी। यह संपूर्ण कार्यक्रम फेसबुक और यूट्यूब पे प्रत्यक्ष प्रसारित हो रहा है। ये कर रहे ठाणे के गुणीजन श्री मकरंद मोड़े, उनको हाल ही में उनको गुणीजन अवार्ड डिक्लेयर हो चुका है। उन्हें और उनके चमू को भी मनपूर्वक धन्यवाद। हमारे सब इस कार्यक्रम को आप सब लोगों ने अच्छा प्रसाद दिया, यहाँ उपस्थिति लगाई, इसलिए हमारा हौसला बढ़ा। आपके प्रोत्साहन के लिए बहुत बहुत आभार। हमारे बहुत माननीय दातागण यहाँ उपस्थित है, उन सबके प्रति हार्दिक कृतज्ञता और आभार। हमारी निधि समिति और हमारे कार्यकर्ता इनके आभार नहीं माने जाते, इसलिए मैं निवेदिता जी का आभार प्रदर्शित नहीं किया है। लेकिन ये सब काम कर, इन सबको मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ। लेकिन जब ये मैं काम कर रहा था तब दिन रात मैं अलग अलग लोगों को फ़ोन करता था कि मैंने कभी पूछा नहीं फ़ोन करूँ क्या। मैं फ़ोन करता रहा, वो फ़ोन उठाते गए। उसमें कुछ नाम मैं ज़रूर लेना चाहता हूँ। अभय जी बापट, विलास जी बेलापुरकर, राजीव जी महेंद्रे, जयंत जी पाटिल, श्री हरजी निस्सुरे और हमारे नए कार्यकर्ता भालचंद्र दाते। इन सब ने कभी भी जब मैंने चाहा तब वो मेरे लिए अवेलेबल थे। हाँ, इसमें कुछ नाम मैंने नहीं लिए हैं कि जैसे मैंने पहले ही कहा कि नाम नहीं लेना चाहिए, लेकिन इन लोगों का नाम लेने बिना मैं ये आभार प्रदर्शन समाप्त नहीं कर सकता। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू माधव जी, हिंदी में आभार प्रदर्शन करने के कारण। खरं तर कार्यक्रम मराठीत व्हायला पाहिजे असं वाटत असेल ठाणेकरांना, पण सगळ्यांसाठी विवेकानंद केंद्राच्या पद्धतीप्रमाणे आपण हा कार्यक्रम आणि संजीवजींसाठी आपण हा कार्यक्रम स्पेशली इंग्लिशमधनं केलेला आहे आणि दरवेळेला आपण कार्यक्रम इंग्लिशमधनंच करतो। ठीक आहे, आपण आता कार्यक्रमाच्या शेवटाला येऊया। I must thank all of you. A kind-hearted, worthy audience has given a great inspiration to our program, and we are sure you would respond to our appeal definitely within some time. I, Smita Puranik, thanks once again on behalf of Vivekananda Kendra to everyone. We hereby conclude our program with this program with Shanti Mantra, सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः. बिफोर दॅट मला तुम्हाला 2-3 सूचना द्यायच्या आहेत की ह्या कार्यक्रमानंतर हाय टी आहे. फक्त हाय टीला आपली तेवढी कपॅसिटी नसल्यामुळे आपल्याकडे 2-3 एक पुस्तकांचा स्टॉल आहे आणि ज्यांचं रजिस्ट्रेशन करायचं राहिलेलं आहे त्यांनी कृपया रजिस्ट्रेशन करून मगच हाय टीकडे जा, म्हणजे आपल्याकडे त्या पद्धतीने रेकॉर्ड राहू शकेल. सो प्रत्येकाने हाय टी, त्याने कार्यक्रमाला आणखीन छान शोभा आलेली आहे. त्यामुळे थँक्यू दीपालीताई आणि उज्ज्वलाताई, धन्यवाद. आपण आता प्रोग्राम शांती मंत्रांनी संपवूया आणि त्याच्यानंतर सगळ्यांनी मी जसं म्हटलं तसं ज्यांचं रजिस्ट्रेशन राहिलं आहे त्यांनी रजिस्ट्रेशन करून घ्या. ज्यांना बुक स्टॉलमध्ये इंटरेस्ट आहे, पुस्तकं बघायची आहेत, त्यांनी जरूर विवेकानंद केंद्राची पुस्तकं बघा, विकत घ्या. आपला डोनेशनचा पण तिथे काउंटर आहे, त्यालाही व्हिजिट द्या आणि हाय टी पण सगळ्यांनी घेतल्याशिवाय घरी जायचं नाही आहे. धन्यवाद.
सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्. ओम शांति शांति शांति.
कार्यक्रमाची सांगता झालेली आहे. धन्यवाद.